The city stretched beneath the blazing sun like a jewel carved from both past and present. White-walled mansions gleamed on one side of the avenue, their pristine walls reflecting the pride of modern wealth, while just beyond, narrow alleys twisted like veins through the bustling heart of commerce. Markets overflowed with color, bright fabrics fluttered in the wind. The scent of spices and roasted maize hung in the air, and the rhythm of drums echoed faintly from a corner where children chased each other beneath the shade of a towering ancestral tree. Shadows of ancient murals peeked from luxury estates, reminding all who passed that no matter how high one rose, the roots of tradition ran deep. In a sleek, black sports car, laughter erupted from a group of young men, voices tinged with arrogance and mischief. At the center, Ideal, the city's rising billionaire, leaned back, a glint of pride in his eyes. "I tell you," he said, swirling his gold watch against the sunlight, "any woman I choose will bend to my world, or I lose nothing but a game." His friends chuckled, the sound echoing down the street. $5 million, my friends," he continued, "and I will show you how a man shapes destiny to his liking." Meanwhile, across the city, in a small, humble apartment tucked between high-end boutiques and white-walled compounds, Oyewasi moved carefully, balancing a basket of groceries on her hip. Her modest dress, patterned with subtle nods of heritage, contrasted with the modern fashion of women passing by in sleek heels and tailored suits. Despite her overweight frame and the judgments whispered behind her back, her eyes shone with intelligence and quiet determination. She paused at a cracked mirror in her doorway, her reflection whispering of possibilities she did not yet understand. A faded birth certificate lay tucked in the corner of a drawer, its ink blurred, a silent clue to a life she had yet to know. Across the street, merchants and neighbors exchanged hushed remarks. "Did you hear about Ideal's latest bet?" a young woman whispered, glancing around as if the air itself might carry her words to ears unkind. "He thinks he can take any woman and mold her like clay." A man nodded, shaking his head. "Pride like that never ends well. The ancestors do not favor such arrogance." As Oyewasi walked through the crowded market, the sun caught on a small statue of a revered ancestor, tucked between fresh produce and sparkling fabrics. She paused, a shiver of awareness brushing her spine, as though the statue's eyes recognized her truth before she did. Somewhere in the bustling streets, Ideal's laughter carried, oblivious to the silent threads of fate weaving through the city. Later, in the opulent lounge of his mansion, Ideal recounted the bet to his friends, his voice a mix of charm and recklessness. "A woman's worth is measured by how she conforms to my world," he said, leaning over a marble table. "Watch closely. This will be the most entertaining game yet." Mirrors hung across the room, reflecting not just their images, but the arrogance that clung to each of them like a second skin. Yet in the reflection, faint shadows hinted at judgment, at karma poised patiently beyond the walls of wealth. Back in her small apartment, Oyewasi prepared a simple meal, the sound of sizzling oil and chopping knife grounding her in a world of modest reality. The city hummed outside, luxury cars gliding past, street vendors calling, children laughing in the alleys. And yet, in the corners of her dreams, opulent halls shimmered, mysterious letters with golden seals appeared, and a sense of destiny stirred quietly in her heart. That evening, as the sky burned crimson and the city lights flickered awake, the market emptied, but whispers lingered. Shadows of ancestors seemed to stretch along the white walls, reminding all who walked beneath them that every action, every act of pride or humility would be witnessed. The contrast between wealth and struggle, between modern ambition and the quiet pull of tradition, was clear. The city was alive with expectation, as though fate itself walked beside Ideal and Oyewasi, waiting for the moment when the humble and the proud would meet and the threads of destiny would tighten around them. In the quiet of her apartment, Oyewasi looked once more at the cracked mirror. Her eyes lingered on the reflection not just of her body, but of her spirit. Somewhere in the heart of the city, her life and Ideal's pride were destined to collide. And though she did not yet know it, the whispers of fate and the watchful eyes of ancestors had already begun their silent judgment. The city rose like a jewel contrast, a place where the past and present danced uneasily together. White-walled mansions gleamed proudly under the blazing sun, their polished columns casting shadows that stretched like fingers into narrow alleys below. Here, the pulse of modern wealth met the hum of tradition. Bustling markets spilled over with color, scents, and stories, while hidden corners whispered secrets of lives unseen. The laughter of children playing near murals of ancestral figures echoed faintly against the walls, a reminder that no matter how far the city reached into the future, the roots of history ran deep. In the heart of this city moved Ayodele, a man of wealth and ambition, known far and wide for his charm and his recklessness. At 29, he had already built an empire, yet nothing seemed to satisfy him. Power was his lifeblood, social status his obsession. On this sunlit afternoon, he lounged in a sleek cafe with friends, the clink of crystal glasses punctuating their laughter. "I tell you," Ayodele said, swirling the amber liquid in his glass, "I can take any woman and mold her to my will. Watch closely. $5 million, and I'll prove it." His friends laughed, the sound bright and cruel, echoing through the terrace of the cafe. "You think you can bend destiny?" one teased, smirking. Ayodele's grin only widened, his pride shining brighter than the city's white walls. Meanwhile, not far away, Oluwase moved through crowded streets, a basket of freshly bought vegetables balanced on her hip. Her soft, curving frame was often overlooked, her modern yet modest clothing contrasting sharply with the tailored suits and high heels of other women passing by. Yet beneath the world's judgments, she carried herself with dignity and quiet strength. Her eyes, deep and observant, drank in the colors of the markets, the reds of spices, the golds of fabrics shimmering in the sun, the green of fresh produce glistening with morning dew. Each sound, each scent, each gesture of the bustling marketplace was a story waiting to be told. She paused at a corner where an old mural depicted a warrior from ages past, and for a heartbeat, she felt the weight of her own destiny pressing upon her. Villagers and neighbors, familiar with both the streets and the whispers of the city, exchanged quiet observations. "Did you hear what Ayodele said?" murmured a vendor arranging her cloths. "He believes he can turn a woman's life into a game." Another nodded, his eyes shadowed with concern. "Pride like that cannot go unchecked. The ancestors watch, and karma is patient." These whispers wove through the air, unnoticed by most, yet they threaded themselves around Oluwase and Ayodele alike, binding their fates in ways neither fully understood. In the quiet of her small apartment, Oluwase placed a hand on a cracked mirror. Her reflection showed the world what it expected: a simple, overweight young woman, struggling to survive. Yet the mirror, dull with age, reflected more than flesh and clothes. It hinted at something hidden. A folded letter with a wax seal lay tucked beneath her bed, a birth certificate yellowed with age peeking from its envelope. She had glimpsed it only once, but her dreams, strange and opulent, returned to it night after night. Grand halls, unseen relatives, wealth she could scarcely imagine. The city's energy, the laughter and footsteps outside, felt suddenly charged with an unseen force, stirring anticipation in her chest. Meanwhile, Ayodele's arrogance continued to ripple through his world. In his mansion, mirrors lined the walls, reflecting not just his face but his unchecked pride. He paced, recounting the bet to his friends, gestures sharp, words faster than thought. "I will take someone from nothing and show them their place. $5 million. It's nothing compared to the spectacle." Yet even in the gleaming room, subtle signs whispered truths he refused to see. The ancestral masks on the shelves seemed to judge, the golden sunlight filtering through the windows, highlighting not luxury, but folly. As evening approached, the city shifted. Street lamps flickered on, painting the white walls of compounds in shades of gold. The markets quieted, but traces of stories lingered. Discarded fabrics rustled in the wind. The scent of spiced food hung heavy, and the hum of distant drums reminded passers-by of traditions that refused to be forgotten. In alleys where the light barely reached, voices whispered secrets of ambition, of pride, of fates yet unwritten. Oluwase walked past, catching fragments of gossip, feeling them curl around her like invisible threads, tying her to a destiny she could not yet name. She paused once more at her mirror, touching the frame as though seeking guidance. Outside, the city continued its dance of light and shadow, wealth and struggle, modernity and tradition. Somewhere, Ideal laughed, oblivious to the undercurrents shaping their world. Yet fate had already begun its quiet work. The markets, the murals, the whispered stories, all bore witness to the collision of two lives, one defined by pride and ambition, the other by resilience, humility, and the untapped power of hidden heritage. As night fell, the city exhaled, lights twinkling like stars fallen to earth. The markets were empty, the alleys silent, and yet every wall, every statue, every whisper hinted at what was to come. The moral threads of the story, woven into sunlight, shadows, and reflections, suggested a reckoning. Pride would be tested, humility would be revealed, and destiny, ancient, patient, and just, would claim its due. The city shimmered like a jewel of contrasts, its white-walled mansions gleaming under the afternoon sun, while narrow alleys had secrets of lives less fortunate. Markets buzzed with activity. Women called out prices. Children chased one another between stalls, the aroma of spices mingling with the scent of freshly baked bread. The rhythm of the city was alive, a heartbeat woven from tradition and ambition. Murals of ancestors adorned walls and quiet corners, their painted eyes watching over the city's hustle, reminding all who passed that the past was never far behind. Amid this dance of light and shadow moved Ideal, a young billionaire whose confidence bordered on arrogance. At 29, he had built an empire through ambition, charm, and a keen understanding of power. Yet for all his wealth, he sought more: admiration, control, the thrill of bending the world to his will. Today, he lounged in an upscale cafe terrace with a few close friends. Crystal glasses clinked against one another, laughter filling the air. "I tell you, it's simple," Ideal said, swirling amber whiskey in his hand. $5 million. I will marry any woman I choose and shape her to my expectations. Watch and learn. A friend leaned back, smirking. "You truly believe money can bend a heart and change a life?" Ideal's eyes glimmered with mischief. "Not just money," he said, tapping the polished gold watch on his wrist. "Power, influence, status. It's all part of the game, and I always win." He gestured toward a sleek black sports car parked below. "Even a glance at my garage, and they know who commands the city." His friends laughed again, unaware or unwilling to notice the shadows in the alleys below, where destiny quietly observed. Elsewhere, Oyewasi moved with quiet grace through the same streets, a basket balanced carefully on her hip. Her round figure drew glances, some judgmental, others curious. She wore a modest dress of soft blue, embroidered subtly with patterns reminiscent of her ancestors. Her dark eyes scanned the markets, not for luxury or status, but for life's small necessities: fresh vegetables, grains, and the occasional sweet treat for herself. In the marketplace, she was invisible to those who prized only wealth and beauty, but those who saw deeper recognized a quiet intelligence, resilience, and heart that could not be measured by pounds or possessions. As she walked, whispers followed her steps. Vendors and neighbors spoke softly among themselves, commenting on Ideal's audacious bet and the audacity of wealth playing with lives. "That man," said an old stall keeper, arranging vibrant fabrics, "thinks he can twist fate like clay. Pride like that never lasts." Another nodded, eyes clouded with foreboding. "The ancestors watch, and their patience is long. The city remembers." Oyewasi heard none of this, yet the words curled around her like invisible threads, tying her story to a future still unseen. In her modest apartment, she paused before a small mirror, one edge chipped from years of use. She traced her reflection with a gentle finger, seeing not only her current form but glimpses of the life hinted at in dreams of opulent halls, faces she never knew, and a lineage steeped in wealth and mystery. Beneath the bed, a yellowed birth certificate peeped from an envelope, long forgotten. She had glimpsed it once, curious but fearful, unsure of what secrets it held. In her dreams, the city seemed larger, its streets filled with possibilities she had never dared imagine. Meanwhile, Ideal's mansion glittered with excess. Mirrors lined the walls, reflecting more than his face. They reflected ambition, arrogance, and the weight of expectations he had placed upon himself and others. A gold-plated fountain trickled in the courtyard, and statues of ancestors seemed to judge the young man's reckless pride. He paced, recounting the details of his bet to friends, gesturing with expensive watches and luxury pens, each movement a silent proclamation of status. "I will take someone from obscurity," he said, "and mold her into my world. $5 million? A trifle compared to the spectacle." Outside, the city responded in its own way. Sunlight reflected off white walls, painting the streets with sharp contrast between the wealthy compounds and the humble alleyways. Markets still buzzed with haggling and storytelling. The scent of spices lingered, and the faint drumbeat of street music carried through the air, a heartbeat of tradition resisting the pull of modernity. In shadowed corners, whispers told of pride and folly, of destiny waiting patiently to intervene. As dusk settled, the city exhaled, lights from windows gleaming like stars fallen to earth. Oyewasi walked past an ancestral mural, feeling its silent eyes upon her. The market was emptying, but the stories persisted, unseen, unheard by most, yet deeply woven into the fabric of the day's events. Ayodele laughed in his mansion, oblivious of threads of fate wrapping around him, the quiet force of morality pressing like wind against the city walls. Every mirror, every whispered story, every ancestral artifact in the city bore witness to what was coming. Pride would be tested, humility would rise, and justice, ancient, patient, and inexorable, would claim its due. The markets, the mansions of white walls, and the narrow alleys held attention as thick as the evening air, preparing the stage for a collision of lives, ambition, and destiny. The city was alive, watching, remembering, and waiting for the moment when the hidden truth of one young woman would astonish the world and humble the man who thought he could control fate itself. The city awoke like a living story, its streets filled with the laughter of children, the cries of vendors, and the rustle of colorful fabrics dancing in the midday sun. White-walled mansions gleamed on high streets, their gates tall and imposing, while narrow alleys wound like serpents beneath shadowed balconies. Markets overflowed with life. Piles of bright spices, fruits, and grains formed mosaics that smelled of earth and sweetness, while drums beat a rhythm that seemed older than the city itself. In the quiet corners, murals of ancestors observed silently, their painted eyes hinting at truths hidden from the unaware. It was a place where wealth brushed shoulders with poverty, and tradition walked hand in hand with ambition. Ayodele moved through this world as though it had been made for him. At 29, he bore the air of someone who had conquered life's heights, yet his heart was restless, fueled by pride and an unquenchable desire to prove mastery over others. Today, he lingered at a terrace overlooking a sunlit street, his dark eyes gleaming with mischief. Around him, friends sipped cocktails, laughter spilling over the balcony. "Tell me again, brother," one said, leaning close. "You will really marry anyone? Shape them to your will." Ayodele smirked, swirling the amber liquid in his glass. "Not just anyone," he said, tapping the gold watch on his wrist. "Anyone. I pick her and I mold her. $5 million says I succeed. Watch, my friends. Watch and learn." Laughter erupted around the table, careless and bright. Yet beneath the clink of glasses and jokes lay a subtle chill. Whispers of fate, the kind elders spoke of in hushed tones, seemed to curl through the city like smoke, unseen yet present. "Pride like that," muttered a waiter passing by, "is a dangerous companion." Meanwhile, several blocks away, Oyewasi wove through the bustling markets with grace despite the weight of a basket on her hip. Her full figure invited glances, some of curiosity, some judgment, yet she walked with quiet dignity. Her dress was simple, sky blue with embroidered patterns nodding to the traditions of her ancestors, and her dark eyes held a sharp intelligence that most overlooked. The market smelled of sweet spices and freshly baked bread, and the rhythm of drummers' hands on drums filled the air with life. Yet even here, the threads of destiny reached her. Whispers traveled faster than her feet. Neighbors noting the young billionaire's arrogance, traders commenting on bets and wagers, and old women shaking their heads in quiet caution. "The man thinks he can control hearts as easily as gold," said one vendor. "The ancestors will show him pride's true measure." Inside her modest apartment, Oyewasi paused before a small, cracked mirror, tracing her reflection. She saw herself not as the world often did, overlooked, underestimated, but as she was in the silent depths of her heart, capable, intelligent, and resilient. From beneath her bed, A yellowed envelope peeked out, its contents a faded birth certificate, evidence of heritage unknown, a past she had never claimed. Dreams of opulent halls and faces unknown had visited her sleep repeatedly, leaving a longing she could not explain, a sense of a life yet to be lived. Back at the mansion, Ayodele recounted the details of his secret bet to friends, gesturing with expensive watches and the sparkle of rings that caught the sun. "It is simple," he said, eyes glittering with triumph. "I choose, she follows, and I win. $5 million is nothing for the satisfaction of bending life to my will." His friends laughed, drinking deeply, unaware of the moral consequences hovering like a shadow above the terrace. Mirrors along the walls reflected their gleaming faces and the gold of their possessions, reflecting not just wealth but hubris. As dusk fell, the city's heartbeat shifted. Sunlight gilded white walls. The alleys darkened and the markets emptied, leaving a hush that seemed pregnant with destiny. The city itself seemed to breathe, a silent witness to pride and patience, ambition and humility. Ayodele walked past a mural of ancestors etched into a stone wall, sensing the silent gaze upon her. Her steps were careful, her mind alive with questions she dared not speak aloud. Meanwhile, Ayodele laughed inside his mansion, oblivious to the threads of fate weaving invisibly around him. Each mirror, each artifact, each shadow held a story, and the city remembered all. The contrast of gleaming wealth and quiet humility, of pride and unseen destiny, set the stage for a collision of lives that would test the limits of ambition, reveal hidden strength, and remind all who lived under the African sun that fate bends not to gold, but to truth. Every color in the market, every whispered secret in the alleys, every ancestral gaze carved into the walls prepared the scene. Pride would face humility, wealth would meet integrity, and the young woman, underestimated and unnoticed, would unknowingly hold the key to shocking the man who believed the world itself answered to his command. The sun dipped low, and the city waited, alive with expectation, ready to bear witness to the moral reckoning that had begun in whispers, echoed through laughter, and would soon arrive in full, unstoppable force. The sun dipped low over the city, casting long shadows across the white-walled compounds and narrow alleys. The market's colors, bright oranges, yellows, and reds of fabrics fluttering the wind, still lingered in the memory of the day, but the quiet streets now carried whispers sharper than any drumbeat. In the heart of this modern African city, where wealth and tradition rubbed shoulders, the gaze of society weighed heavier than any burden of gold. Ayodele walked with careful steps, her basket balanced on her head, a few coins clinking inside. Her mind was filled with numbers, debts, and calculations for the day, yet the eyes of others never strayed far from her form. Children tugged at their mothers' skirts, pointing and whispering in innocent curiosity, yet the whispers soon morphed into judgment. Traders behind their stalls leaned forward, murmuring under their breaths about her weight, her beauty, or the lack thereof. "See her again," murmured one, a woman arranging spices. "Such a kind soul, yet she carries it all so heavily." Another man, polishing the wood of his stall, shook his head. "A heart of gold, perhaps, but what use is that to a girl who must marry well? No man will choose her, not with all the city watching." Ayodele caught fragments of the words, yet she lifted her head higher, shoulders squared. She had grown accustomed to these sideways glances, these quiet critiques, but her spirit refused to bow. In the silence between whispers, she heard the distant rhythm of drums, a heartbeat older than the city itself, reminding her that true strength comes not from the eyes of others, but from the courage of one's own heart. In a quiet alley, she paused before a mirror propped against a crumbling wall, left by some passerby. She studied her reflection, round cheeks, soft shoulders, and eyes that held intelligence and warmth. Her lips curved in a small, knowing smile. The mirror reflected not just her face, but her essence, resilience, loyalty, and dignity. Symbols of her heritage seemed to whisper from the worn frame, ancestral reminders that beauty and worth are measured in courage, compassion, and honor, not the fleeting approval of society. Meanwhile, beyond the city's bustling heart, conversations swirled like wind in hidden corners. Villagers and neighbors spoke quietly, almost ritualistically, their voices a mixture of gossip and prophecy. "She is unaware of the circles above her," said one elder, fingers tracing the patterns of a carved wooden staff. She cannot yet see the forces at watch. Yet the gods have their eyes on her, as they do on all whose hearts are pure. A mother passing by with her child shook her head knowingly. Look at her! So kind! Yet they measure her only by weight, by looks. The city does not see her strength, nor the fire she carries inside. Even the children, with their unguarded eyes, pointed, whispered, and laughed, oblivious to the deeper truths they observed. For in their innocence, they saw only the surface, the contrast between her round form and the delicate waist of other women in silks and patterned dresses. Yet the elders' voices lingered, carrying moral weight through the market and alleyways. True worth is invisible to shallow eyes, and pride that judges by appearance alone will one day be humbled. Ayawasiai's path led past a small shrine tucked behind an ancient fig tree. Here, tiny offerings, beads, grains, and polished stones spoke of prayers for protection and guidance. She knelt briefly, placing her hand on the warm, sun-baked stones, whispering her own silent prayers for strength and patience. The air seemed to hum in response, a quiet affirmation that the spirits of the city, of ancestors past, recognized her worth where others did not. Back in the alleys and homes surrounding the market, women shook their heads in disapproval, while men murmured agreements about appearances, status, and propriety. Yet beneath their gossip lay an unspoken tension. Fate is rarely swayed by mockery, and the lives of those underestimated often conceal the power to astonish. Each word of judgment, each sidelong glance, was another thread in the web of destiny, slowly drawing her closer to the moment when the city's superficial measures of value would clash with the truth hidden in her heart. The evening sun cast a golden hue across the white walls, illuminating contrast so stark in this city. Luxury alongside poverty, pride beside humility, appearance versus inner virtue. Ayawasiai walked to the fading light, carrying her basket, her dignity, and her secret heritage like armor. Though society whispered and judged, she moved with purpose, her mind alive with the knowledge that worth cannot be weighed in coins or glances. The city's murmurs, the ancestral symbols, the whispers of karma, all conspired silently to remind her the world may not see her now, but those who act with purity, patience, and courage are never truly unseen. And as the shadows deepened, the rhythm of drums from the distant market square rose once more, echoing to the alleyways and across the white-walled mansions. Each beat was a heartbeat of destiny, a signal that the judgments of society, as loud and pervasive as they seemed, were merely a prelude. For in the heart of a kind soul lies a strength that cannot be measured by gossip, a resilience that will one day astonish the very eyes that doubted her, and a beauty that no whisper can diminish. The city hummed with life, its white-walled mansions gleaming in the afternoon sun. Yet in the quiet corners, shadows moved as though listening. The marketplaces were alive with clattering coins, haggling voices, and the sharp fragrance of spices mingled with freshly baked bread. Amid this vibrant chaos, small signs whispered of destinies yet to unfold, unseen by all but those attuned to the language of the ancestors. Ayawasiai moved through the alleys with her basket balanced carefully on her head. Her eyes caught the reflection of sunlight on a small, cracked mirror leaning against the doorway. The surface shimmered, distorting her form. Yet in the ripple of her reflection, she glimpsed something deeper, a fire in her eyes, a strength unspoken, a future unimagined. The mirror seemed to murmur, "Not all who see you will recognize your worth, but truth remains." Near the marketplace, a sculpted figure of an ancestral guardian stood quietly among the modern shops. The bronze statue, weathered and solemn, depicted a figure holding a scale of justice, its eyes cast downward in judgment and mercy at once. Passers-by rarely noticed it, yet its presence echoed a moral warning. Pride and arrogance can blind even the wealthiest, and humility carries unseen power. Ayawasiai paused to rearrange her basket of yams and grains, feeling the weight not just of the produce, but of countless gazes upon her. Children whispered. Traders muttered under their breath. Neighbors exchanged sidelong glances. "See her heart?" murmured one. Yet the city judges only her form. Another nodded, fingers brushing the carved patterns of a wooden staff leaning against the wall. Patience, child of the ancestors. Fate watches, even where eyes do not. Meanwhile, atop a distant balcony in one of the gleaming mansions, Adissa, the young billionaire, spoke in low tones with his companions. "I wager I can marry anyone," he said, his voice tinged with both arrogance and amusement. "I will shape her into my vision. $5 million says it is possible." His friends laughed, the sound echoing across the courtyard, unaware that unseen forces, the whispers of the city, the judgment of ancestors, the moral threads of karma, had already begun weaving a net around his pride. Back on the street, Oyewasiai's eyes fell upon a small charm hanging from a doorway, a bead of deep amber, shaped like an eye, said to ward off evil and reveal hidden truths. She touched it lightly, sensing more than superstition. The charm seemed to vibrate with the unspoken voices of those who had walked the city before her, warning of trials, guiding the innocent, and reminding all who dare to judge that no life is free of consequence. A gust of wind stirred, lifting the edge of her dress and carrying the scent of roasted peanuts and cassava across the narrow alley. She shivered, not from cold but from the awareness that life often hides its most dangerous lessons behind ordinary sights. A woman sitting near the fountain whispered to another, "Do you think she knows what's coming?" The reply, soft and tense, echoed like prophecy. She knows nothing yet, and yet everything awaits her. Oyewasiai adjusted her basket and walked past a mural painted on the side of a luxury home, a mother cradling her child, both figures bathed in gold and sunlight, symbolizing abundance and the cycles of life. She stopped for a moment, tracing the painted lines with her gaze. The mural seemed to nod, saying, without words, that every soul carries both hidden potential and hidden trials, and that the measure of a person's worth is found in courage, patience, and integrity, not in the fleeting opinions of society. The city seemed alive with omens. A black cat crossed the path of a wealthy businessman hurrying past. A street musician's drumbeat faltered and skipped. A candle flickered in a shrine tucked between two shops. Each small event carried a weight of warning, a caution for those who move with arrogance and a signal for those who move with purpose. Even as Odysseus' laughter rang from above, the subtle currents of destiny pulled at the edges of his plan. Oyewasiai arrived at her small compound as the sun dipped low, casting golden light across the white walls. Her reflection, in a polished brass plate on her table, caught her attention again. She studied the familiar yet strange face staring back, eyes that carried intelligence, humility, and unrecognized power. For a moment she whispered, "I do not know what awaits me, but I will walk the path given, with heart and honor." The city seemed to answer with silence and movement alike. The rhythm of life, the unseen eyes of ancestors, and the gentle hum of fate pressing forward. In the marketplace, in the alleys, and atop the white-walled compounds, the tension between pride and destiny coiled invisibly. Odysseus' wager, the whispers of neighbors, the protective symbols of ancestry, and Oyewasiai's quiet inner strength converge in a delicate, suspenseful balance. Every glance, every gesture, every reflection in a mirror spoke of the trials to come, the moral choices to be made, and the unseen justice that waits for all who dare to manipulate the lives of others. The city's lights flickered on one by one, and in each flicker, the message of the ancestors whispered softly, "The heart that is true cannot be hidden, and the prideful will learn the cost of their arrogance." As Oyewasiai prepared her small meal, unaware of the billionaire's plan and the wager that would soon shape her life, she felt the subtle pull of destiny and the weight of her unseen potential. The journey ahead promised struggle, revelation, and transformation, all written in the rhythms of the city, in the reflections of mirrors, and in the quiet, watchful eyes of the ancestors who never sleep. The city of Adebayo stood at the edge of modern ambition and ancestral memory. White-walled mansions gleamed beneath the sun, their pillars casting long, proud shadows across the narrow streets below. High above, balconies lined with blooming bougainvillea overlooked bustling marketplaces, where merchants shouted their prices, and children darted between stalls, laughing, their small feet stirring up clouds of dust and life. Yet in the quiet alleys, behind the silver gates, and beneath the flickering street lamps, secrets whispered. It was a city alive, both in its grandeur and in its hidden murmurs, bearing witness to destinies yet written. Oyewasiai moved among the crowds, her basket of yams and cassava balanced with practiced care. She was known for her kindness, her intelligence, and the gentle patience that tempered every action, though the city's eyes measured only her shape. Whispers followed her as she walked past shuttered shops and open stalls. "See her weight," said one woman, voice low. Yet her hands are steady. She knows her work. A man nodded, touching the carved patterns of a small staff at the market's edge. "Do not judge what you cannot understand," he murmured. And somewhere, an unseen force seemed to nod in agreement. The ancestors watching, patient, silent, waiting. Above the city, in a mansion as white as polished bone, Adissa laughed, rich and unrestrained. His companions clustered around him like hawks. "I wager I can marry anyone and make her into my vision," he said, glancing at his golden watch as though time itself had consented to his plan. $5 million, and I will prove it." Laughter erupted, clinking glasses, shiny with privilege, unaware of the moral tides already rising to meet them. The statue of an ancestral figure, carved centuries before the city's modern sprawl, seemed to look down from its place in the courtyard, scales of judgment held firm in its bronze hands. Even in stillness it spoke. Pride blinds and arrogance. Oyewasi paused by a small mirror, leaning against a weathered wall. Her reflection shimmered oddly in the cracked glass, and for a heartbeat, she saw more than a familiar form. She glimpsed strength, quiet resolve, and a fire that would not be measured by the eyes of the city. Whispered words seemed to rise from the glass itself. "Not all who see you will recognize your worth, child of the ancestors, but truth cannot be hidden forever." Nearby, a mural caught her attention, painted across a luxury wall. It depicted a mother cradling her child, bathed in gold light, eyes closed in a protective calm. It was a reminder, subtle but piercing. Life measures a person not by society's fleeting judgments, but by the courage of the heart and the strength of spirit. She traced the painted lines with her fingers, absorbing a lesson she did not yet fully understand. Every curve, every color, whispered that destiny moves for the humble and waits for the prideful. Even the city itself seemed aware. Street musicians drummed uneven rhythms. The wind stirred scents of roasted peanuts and fragrant spices, and a black cat crossed the path with eyes like liquid gold, unseen by all but those attuned to its significance. Each detail, each moment, seemed to murmur warnings to those who would listen. The wealthy, confident, and reckless, like Adissa, would soon see how delicate the threads of fate truly were. Oyewasi felt the weight of unseen gazes, yet her spirit remained unbowed. Neighbors whispered behind curtains. Elders nodded knowingly to each other. Children stared curiously, and the marketplace seemed to watch. "She knows nothing," one trader muttered, "and yet her path is written in the stars." And it was true. The city itself bore witness. Each alley, each white wall, each flicker of sunlight reflecting off polished surfaces, a silent observer to the story unfolding. As Adissa sipped champagne and boasted of the wager with friends, the city's subtle forces stirred. Mirrors caught reflections that were not mere appearances. Bronze statues shifted their gaze. Murals whispered truths, and the air carried hints of what was coming, an entanglement of pride, transformation, and moral consequence. He saw only the surface, the power, the control, oblivious to the unseen currents that tied his destiny to the life of a woman he did not yet understand. Oyewasi returned to her modest home as evening stretched its long fingers across the city. She placed her basket down, the weight of daily survival heavy but familiar. Her reflection in a polished brass plate caught her eye. She studied herself, intelligent, kind, loyal, strong. "I do not know what awaits," she whispered, "but I will face it with honor." The city seemed to answer in kind. The wind stirred, candles flickered in shrines, distant laughter of children echoed, and the soft murmur of ancestral voices rose and fell, reminding all that the humble heart and the proud soul were equally watched, equally measured. In the marketplace, in the alleys, and atop the white-walled compounds, the tension built between unseen forces and human pride, between destiny and free will. Adissa's wager, the whispers of neighbors, the watchful eyes of ancestors, and Oyewasi's quiet strength all converged. Every glance, every reflection, every whispered judgment carried weight. The story of the city, rich and poor alike, unfolded slowly, like the threads of finely woven cloth, each pattern signaling trials, revelation, and the moral reckoning that awaited. And as the night deepened, a single truth became clear. The city, the people, and the spirits of those long gone were witnesses to the lives of the living. For every act of pride, every step of humility, every whispered word, destiny was listening. And one day, Not far off, the wager, the transformation, and the lessons of the ancestors would meet in a clash that would leave no soul untouched. The city of Iko shimmered like a jewel in the heart of Africa, a tapestry woven from the threads of tradition and modernity. White-walled mansions rose proudly beside narrow alleys, where the scent of roasted maize and ground spices mingled with the dust of daily life. Bright fabrics flapped in the markets like flags, announcing the presence of women who called out their wares with voices that carried rhythm, song, and the weight of history. Statues of ancestors, bronze and solemn, stood discreetly in luxury courtyards, their eyes eternal, reminding all who pass that the past watches the present. And in quiet corners, beyond the reach of the city's clamorous heartbeat, whispers of secrets and fate drifted like invisible wind, touching the lives of those unaware that destiny was observing. Oluwase navigated the busy streets with grace, her hand steady despite the weight of her basket. The city judged her silently, as neighbors whispered behind lace-curtained windows. "She is strong," one elder murmured, "but see how they measure her by form, not spirit." Children peeked from alleyways, curious at her stride, and merchants nodded respectfully, sensing an energy about her that could not be seen, only felt. Her reflection caught in a cracked shop mirror, a distorted image, yet her eyes betrayed courage, quiet strength, and a heart untouchable by gossip. Above her world of daily toil, in a mansion of glistening white stone, Adissa reclined on a velvet divan, a glass of champagne in hand. His laughter rang through the gilded halls, mingling with the cheers of friends who clustered around him like loyal courtiers. "I tell you, $5 million, he said, glinting gold cufflinks catching the sunlight. "I can marry anyone, and by the end, she will be nothing but my creation." The men erupted in laughter, glasses clinking, their joy unaware of the shadows of consequence gathering beyond the walls. Bronze statues on pedestals seemed to tighten their gaze, ancestral eyes narrowing in silent warning. Adissa's companion, Chike, leaned forward, grinning. "But Oluwase, that girl from the market? Are you serious?" Adissa's lips curled in a smirk. "She has spirit, yes, but she is naive. I can mold her as easily as clay. Pride is a tool, my friend, and charm a hammer." Back in the market, the city murmured with life. A mural stretched across a mansion wall, a mother bathed in golden light, cradling a child. Each brushstroke seemed to hum with meaning. True worth cannot be fashioned, only revealed. Oluwase paused to trace the lines with her fingertips, sensing the ancestral wisdom hidden within the colors. A stray cat padded across the mosaic tiles of the market, its golden eyes glinting like prophecy. Even in her unassuming form, she carried the power that only the humble heart could bear. The whispers followed her home, subtle yet persistent. "She is clever," a neighbor muttered, "but does she know the ways of the wealthy? The city's eyes are on her, though she sees nothing." Another added, "Pride will blind them. The ancestors never sleep." And indeed, somewhere above in the quiet of the mansion's courtyard, a mirror reflected Adissa's confident face. Yet it showed more than vanity. It hinted at the unraveling of pride, the approaching reckoning. Will meet consequence. Inside her small apartment, Oluwase placed her basket down. She looked into a polished brass plate and whispered to herself, "I do not yet know the path they have chosen, but I will walk it with honor." Candles flickered near a small shrine, the smoke twisting like living fingers, and she felt the weight of unseen eyes, ancestors watching, guiding, and guarding. Across the city, Adissa continued his boast, blind to the lesson mirrored in every street, every mural, every whisper of fate. The markets, the mansions, the quiet alleys, all became actors in the story. Colors clashed and mingled, aromas of food and incense swirled, and children's laughter carried across rooftops. Yet beneath the surface, a subtle tension grew. Mirrors reflected not only appearances but truths. Statues stood as sentinels of morality. Murals whispered cautionary tales to those who could see beyond the surface. Every gesture, every glance, every decision seemed to echo in the moral fabric of the city. Adissa's wager, though cloaked in wealth and laughter, set a chain of events in motion. For every step he took with pride, every boast he uttered with arrogance, the city recorded it, the ancestors noted it, and destiny prepared its reckoning. Oluwase's journey, unrecognized by the elite, intertwined with his fate, and the lessons hidden in mirrors, murals, and whispers of karma promised that superficial judgments would crumble before virtue, humility, and truth. As night fell, the city's lights flickered like fireflies, casting shadows on the white walls, alleys, and market stalls. The people went about their lives, unknowingly part of a story larger than themselves. For in Ikoeo, every act of pride, every humble deed, and every whispered word was observed. And the moment would soon come when the wager, the transformation, and the moral law of the ancestors would converge, leaving neither Adissa nor Oluwase untouched. The city held its breath, a silent witness to destiny, justice, and the unfolding drama of hearts, pride, and the enduring spirit of truth. The city of Ikoeo lay beneath a wide sky, where sunlight struck white-walled mansions and bounced off the cobbled streets like golden water. Markets thrummed with life, each stall a burst of color, scarlet, saffron, indigo, and the air was rich with the scent of roasted yams, fragrant spices, and palm oil. Drums echoed faintly from a courtyard beyond the alley, mingling with the chatter of women and children, the distant hum of traffic, and the laughter of elders who sat in the shade of ancient baobabs. Here, wealth and poverty brushed shoulders. Modernity collided with tradition. A bronze statue of a revered ancestor peeked from behind a high wall, its eyes steady and unyielding, as if observing the heartbeat of the city itself. Oluwase moved through the marketplace, her hands gripping the strap of a worn basket, her chest rising with careful breaths. Despite the way of her life, she carried herself with quiet dignity. A young child ran past, his small feet tapping like a drumbeat on the stone streets. She smiled briefly, unseen, unnoticed, yet unbowed by the murmurs of judgment that trailed her, whispers about her size, her prospects, her worth. "She has courage," said one neighbor under her breath, "but will the world respect what the spirit alone carries?" The city seemed alive with these quiet commentaries, each person a node in a network of fate. Far above, in a mansion framed by pillars of gleaming white stone, Adissa reclined on a sofa of deep emerald velvet. The glint of a gold watch caught the morning light, reflecting in his dark eyes, proud and sharp. Around him, friends laughed boisterously, their voices rich with amusement. $5 million, Adissa boasted, raising his glass. "I can marry anyone at all, and shape them into my desire. Watch me work this like clay, my brothers." Chaik, a friend seated nearby, frowned with intrigue. "But Oluwase," he said, naming the girl who had only brushed past wealth without knowing existed. "Do you really mean her?" Adissa's smile was sharp, almost cruel. "Yes. She is clever, yes, but naive. Pride, persuasion, a little charm. She will bend, I promise. And the wager? It is not for her, but for me to prove who commands destiny in this city." The friends erupted in laughter, glasses clinking, unaware that their mirth stirred the gaze of ancestors long gone, whose bronze eyes glimmered with warning and silent judgment. Meanwhile, back in the marketplace, the city continued its daily symphony. A mural of a mother and child, painted in hues of gold and red on the side of a mansion wall, seemed to glow in the morning sun. Oluwase paused, tracing a finger along its outline. The brushstrokes whispered forgotten language, reminding her that true value resides in the heart, unseen by casual eyes. A cat slinked by, tail raised, sensing unrest in the air. Birds took flight in unison, their wings beating like a warning drum. The city itself seemed to tremble, holding its breath for what was to come. In her modest home, Oluwase looked into the tarnished surface of a small mirror, seeing herself as she truly was. Not the judgmental reflections of neighbors, but her own resilient spirit. She whispered, almost to herself, "I may not know the paths they have chosen, but I will walk with honor, no matter what comes." Candles flickered near her shrine, their smoke curling upward like messages to ancestors, winding to the air to where Adissa's mansion rose above the city like a gilded crown. That evening, as Adissa and his friends schemed, the sky darkened with clouds that moved like restless spirits. The wind whispered to the narrow alleys, carrying hints of rain and a warning to all who would listen. Dogs growled softly in the streets, and distant thunder rumbled beneath the mountain shadow. Even the market's vibrant colors seemed subdued, the bright fabrics fluttering nervously as if sensing the wager's consequences. Voices in quiet corners spoke softly, some with admiration, some with scorn. Pride will always stumble, one elder said, shaking a head crowned with silver hair. The child of humility holds strength unseen. Mark my words, the city watches and fate listens. Another whispered, she is unaware of the wealth observing her, yet she will awaken a storm in its heart. In his mansion, Adissa clinked his glass with confidence, oblivious of the subtle warnings. The mirror reflecting more than his image, the ancestral statue whose eyes seemed to follow him, the wind that carried whispers of fate. The game is mine, he said with certainty. $5 million and the thrill of proving my command. His friends laughed, but the laughter was hollow, drowned out by the city's quiet hum of judgment. Night fell, and the white walls of the city glowed under a silver moon. Quiet alleys breed secrets. Markets emptied of noise but retained their sense, the lingering touch of life. The air was heavy with anticipation. Every gaze, every whisper, every glance at a mirror, every reflection of candlelight hinted that pride would be tested, that transformation awaited, and that karma, the subtle justice of ancestors, would weave through the lives of those who dared to manipulate hearts. Ayawasi slept, unaware of the bet that would soon entangle her life. Yet the city cradled her like a silent witness. Adissa plotted, unaware that the moral tide of destiny was rising against him. And in every street, every mansion, every shadowed corner, the story prepared to unfold, of pride humbled, virtue revealed, and the